Hi guys, I'm Greg.
I'm John.
So there's news here that has dropped this week that people have been asking me to comment on all week, but because I've been moving and I managed to set up this set today and the camera and shit and the internet so I could talk about this.
Oh boy.
This is the news that I think is specifically fine-tuned to, out of all like reaction channels or whatever. People have come to me to tell me that I should talk about this. I have been defending this motherfucker for years and he's finally on the comeback streak.
Give Batman a chance.
Mel Gibson is in talks to possibly direct Suicide Squad 2.
Oh boy.
I feel like Mel Gibson could definitely do this movie. All right. I haven't talked with anyone about this. I haven't had a single conversation with John, and I barely even thought about it. The reason why is because right when I heard it, I was like, yeah, he could do it. If you look at all the films Mel Gibson has directed,
yeah.
All right. Now they tend to be historical dramas. First off,
Dances with Wolves, Waterworld.
He did Braveheart. He did Apocalypto. He did Passion of the Christ, and he comes out with Hacksaw Ridge.
Hacksaw Ridge, man.
But this guy also is great, and when he does acting, he's good in the modern day gritty anti-hero roles.
Yeah, and he's capable of standing out in any kind of movie, whether it's Machete Kills or Expendables 3.
Yeah, even though he's directed a modern day movie that's like crime and grit and stuff, I feel like Mel Gibson definitely understands characters like that.
His movies are so varied that I feel like he knows how, and none of his directorial movies have been met with just the. Even the debatable ones are like, well, it sure is immersive, So I think he could crack something like whatever City Suicide Squad was.
The concern is it's way out of his realm.
It is.
It's so unlike anything he's ever had to tackle before. Mm-hmm. But that's a great idea, I think, for DC to do that. Because
you're hiring a villain to direct the
movie.
Exactly.
You're hiring one of Hollywood's popular villains to do. And Mel Gibson is obviously an actor and director that I've loved and supported and wanted him to have a comeback for a long time now. Hacksaw Ridge, even though he's still getting backlash for the nomination, you should get one. Everyone knows the problems that Suicide Squad had.
Even David Ayer
knows like, here are the problems with the fucking movie. If you're gonna get Mel Gibson to do this, you gotta let him do it R-rated. That's the one thing.
Suicide Squad should be R-rated.
With Deadpool being R-rated and Logan getting incredible like a bunch of reviews dropped, everyone is loving Logan. Everyone loves this movie. It's an R-rated flick.
Comic book movies can be more than just PG-13.
And for DC going for its darker vibes, but not giving their films R ratings. Let's think about this. The BVS cut is R-rated edition, and people like that exceptionally more than the theatrical version that was PG-13. I think if you're going to do Suicide Squad 2, if you're going to get Mel Gibson to do it, you got to let him do it his way, which is hard R. His films are hard R movies.
Yeah.
Those films are brutal that he does. But what's great about it is he directs action like no one else. The action sequences, if you look at like Apocalypto or even Hacksaw Ridge, he brings action scenes to life in a way that are realistic, yet they're very stylish, they're bloody, they're gory, and they're entertaining and suspenseful. And that's something Suicide Squad just didn't have. That's just one aspect right there that Suicide Squad didn't have. And you could definitely get that. One thing David Ayer talked about that we thought when we saw it was like, why didn't they just make Joker the main villain?
Yeah.
What's this all supernatural taking down Enchantress shit?
A bunch of people with guns.
Yeah, a bunch of humans.
Magic.
Yeah. It seems like if you're going to give Mel Gibson the rights to do this, you got to let him get involved in the screenplay too, because everything he's ever directed, he's involved in the script process as well. I feel like you're going to have to make the villains more human.
Yeah.
Or whatever the villain is. If you're finally gonna do this, make it the Joker.
You just have to make sure that your heroes and your villains make sense in a fight together. That's all. That's all the quality assurance you need to do there. What you brought up is a good point, because that's the only question mark for me about this arrangement is like what DC wants to do, because I know their mission statement was like, we're going to make our superhero films, we're not going to do the Marvel Committee, we're going to trust our creative minds, and they've proven that that is not entirely the case. Mel Gibson's Suicide Squad would be a very distinct film, I feel like, so...
Well, I feel like Mel Gibson he's not afraid to hold back. Mm-hmm. So, that's one thing I thought like why David Ayer might have been a cool choice for Suicide Squad. Because David Ayer knows how to write crime and grit, and yet none of that's fucking there,
That's what boggles my mind about DC, is they're good at getting people where you're like, yeah, that guy could totally do that pretty easily, probably, just based on their other work, and then it doesn't work out that way.
And Mel Gibson, for one thing he does really well, too, is character-driven pieces. He knows how to make great character and put them in emotionally violent situations as well, which is something the Suicide Squad needs to be. It's called Suicide Squad, you know?
That's an imposing
These guys are
title.
going under the most dangerous missions right now and that are going rogue. I feel like it would be a great chance for Mel Gibson to do this because he recently talked, not a few months ago, about how he thought BVS was shit and he doesn't like a lot of these He pretty much said BVS was shit. I think that's exactly what he said.
Yeah.
He's saying a lot of these movies aren't that great. For Mel Gibson to say that, I mean, this is a great chance for him to like see if he's a man who could live up to the challenge then. For him to be a working director and kind of call out other directors for not going all out. I feel like Mel Gibson would have the balls and be brave enough to just go, fuck it, I'm just going to go all out with this. As long as they let him do it R-rated and go with his grit and style as much as possible. On top of that, too, even though he makes these violent films, he also knows how to bring heart into it without making it feel too hammy. I mean, Hacksaw Ridge is a different case. Of course, it's going to feel a little hammy. It's about a dude who's all about Jesus and stuff, you know?
There's a faith,
It's a faith-based thing. But I feel like with Suicide Squad, at the end of the day, he would really honor the characters. This guy is the master at research. If you look at Mel Gibson's films, what he does for a lot of these historical films, he does tons and tons of historical research before they start writing the film. He wants to make sure he honors the authenticity of it all. So knowing him, he would probably look at the comic books as a version of history and then really go into it and try to honor that as much as possible and then bringing it to life in a great story.
Yeah, and I mean, he's done so many kinds of movies just as an actor. I'm sure a lot of that experience he can draw from. The thing, too, is, like, we're in an interesting time right now because, you know, especially even in the wake of just the most recent DC movies, in the wake of Marvel's last wave of movies, you've got Logan, you've got Deadpool, and like, comic book movie is now at an interesting time because, you know, you've had all those people before being like, you know, it's gonna crash, it's gonna crumble, we're gonna hit critical mass, and I don't think that's necessarily the case, and I think what we're learning right now, what we're seeing is whether or not the genre will crash, or whether it will adapt and broaden out and become more than just, you know, a PG-13 tempo movie, and giving something like a Suicide Squad to Mel Gibson, and again, like you said, if you let him take reign over it, that could be an interesting opportunity if it's played the right way. I think
it's a risky choice because Mel Gibson is not known to do modern day flicks like this. So it's a risky choice. It's very out of his realm. But I also feel like Mel Gibson could probably bring something unique for it. This would be a great chance for DC and a great chance for Mel Gibson to show different sides.
Yeah, and then maybe make something that's more of a film and not just a movie.
Yeah, exactly. All right, guys. Well, what do you think about Mel Gibson directing Suicide Squad 2? If you're new to the channel, you can subscribe to The Real Rejects. John's Reasons to Jerry on Twitter and Instagram. Social media manager at Bloomhouse and The Real Rejects. And now it is time for me to urinate. Can you do the camera?